It's very important for a person to know who or she is. It's important to identify yourself with who you are before trying to work on yourself. So, who are we? What are we? So it's explained in chapter 2 of Tanya. The Alter Rebbe says we're a part of God, literally. We all have that spark in us, literally a part of God in every single one of us. If we're a part of God, we should all be perfect, no? So it's explained that you have another part to you, and that's called the Nefesh HaBahamis, the animalistic soul. You see, every Jew has two souls. One is the Nefesh Elokis, which is that godly soul we mentioned before, that godly part of you. And then there's the Nefesh HaBahamis, the animalistic soul. Each soul has two parts to it. There's the 10 faculties, we call 10 koiches, which are made up of 3 intellectual faculties and 7 emotive faculties. So basically you have 10 ways each soul has 10 ways to understand and feel something. It's what you connect with, it's what you relate to, it's what you identify yourself with using your das, which is one of the intellectual faculties. Then there's the way the soul expresses itself. These are we call the garments of the soul. And that is thought, speech, and action. So if you think about it really, the 10 faculties are more on the inside, what I desire, what I feel, what I intellectually think of. And then there's the outside stuff, how I behave, what I speak about, what I do, what I think of. This may seem a bit confusing at first, but hopefully later on it becomes a little more clear. Now each soul has its 10 faculties and 3 garments geared towards what they represent. So for example, the godly soul only feels godliness, only thinks, speaks, and does Torah and mitzvahs. The animalistic soul feels more mundane things, thinking, speaking, and doing anything but holiness. All your drives and your desires come from this animalistic soul. So who wins? Your godly soul with all of its holiness, or your animalistic soul with its passions? That's up to you. If your godly soul entirely defeats and transforms your animalistic soul, you are what we call a tzaddik, a righteous Jew. If your animalistic soul wins, you're what we call a rasha, loosely translated as a wicked Jew. The question, because obviously there always has to be a question, is as follows. The Alter Rebbe, in his Tanya, mentions the tzaddik. He mentions the rasha. But then he says there's someone else. That someone else is called a Beinoni, the middleman. He's not wicked, but not entirely righteous. So what is he? It seems like it's either one or the other. Either this soul wins and you're a righteous Jew, or that soul wins and you're a wicked Jew. It seems like it's black and white. There's no middle ground. So who's this Beinoni? In fact, just to strengthen our question, the whole Tanya is called Sefer Shel Beinonim, the book of the Beinoni. Because in truth, the whole Tanya, what is it coming to do? It's coming to teach the person how to become a Beinoni. Obviously, I need to know who this Beinoni is before trying to become him. So the explanation in short is like this. The Beinoni is someone who has complete control over those garments we mentioned before. The garments can be translated, let's say, as behavior. This Beinoni, therefore, only thinks good, only speaks with proper speech, only does good things. So if you were to look at this Beinoni, you would say he's a tzaddik, because on the outside he looks perfect. Everything he does is good. So why isn't he called a tzaddik? Why does he have a whole new definition called the Beinoni? That's because of what's going on the inside. What's with the 10 faculties of intellect and emotion? Does he connect with godliness? Does he feel and desire only God? That's a whole nother story. He hasn't gained so much control on the inside. So he desires prohibited things, but he doesn't let them affect the way he acts. Doesn't let them affect his behavior. Doesn't let them affect the way he thinks and speaks. In short, he doesn't let them define who he is as a person. So this Beinoni guy, if you think about it, he has a very hard struggle. He has a constant conflict between what he enjoys on the inside and what he actually does on the outside. Therefore, every time he does a mitzvah, it's always with a push. Imagine someone, for example, living a dual life. He wants to, let's say, sit and watch TV all day, but he forces himself, he pushes himself with Kabbalah's Ol, like we talked about a few weeks ago, to learn or to do another mitzvah. That's a pretty big gap between watching TV and putting on tefillin, or watching TV and going to shul on Shabbos. Where does that power come from? To go from one extreme to the other. To push his way to Torah and mitzvahs, even though he doesn't really want to. There are a few answers to that question, but I think that there's one main answer. And that is something called Mayach Shalit al Halev, which means naturally a person's brain controls over their heart. What does this mean? You can have desires for the worst things, but you have to know that your mind is a powerhouse and can beat anything. The actual knowledge of this, that your mind is so powerful, will help you overcome the desires of your heart. Sometimes we have to realize the power that we have. There's so many times where the Alter Rebbe teaches us that we have to do this and we have to do that. And how does he tell us to do it? By telling us, you have this in you. You have this hidden love in you. So just reveal it. It's not about an external thing coming and helping me out. I always had the power in me. There are basically two categories. Let me get back to what we were saying. There are basically two categories in life. There's what you want, and there's what's right. It's basically mind versus heart. You can have a drive towards prohibited things, but you don't act upon it because your mind knows what's right and what's true. And obviously, so that's one thing. I think the Beinoni has, and Tanya says that the Beinoni has this thing called Mayach Shalit al Halev, which means his mind is controlling the passions of his heart. And then obviously, the Beinoni also has the help of God, giving him the strength to overcome all these passions that they shouldn't manifest themselves. So that's this Beinoni. If you analyze and you think about his service in life, he's a real worker, constantly moving higher and higher. It says in Tanya that if one is used to learning 100 times, back then they actually used to learn a lot, and he only learns that 100 times, he's not called a servant of God. One who learns that one extra time, that 101th time, he is called a servant of God. It's that extra push that defines who you are. And if you didn't understand anything I said, and if you're not going to listen for the rest of this year, if there's one thing you could take from it, it's that line. It's that extra push that defines who you are. You can have a yeshiva bachar who learns all day and never leaves his comfort zone. He just learns because he likes learning. At the same time, a businessman who works all day but gets up early in the morning to put on tefillin, to learn a little. What's the difference between them? The businessman is called a servant of God. The yeshiva bacher is not. We must constantly work on ourselves. Constant work, constant avodah. Avodah means service, just higher and higher. There's a story of the Tzemach Tzedek where a chassid came to him and complained, I have a hard time learning. So the Tzemach Tzedek told him, I'm jealous of you. Learning for me is easy, and therefore I never get to push myself. You get to push yourself and work on yourself every day. How lucky are you? Here's the ultimate question. It says in chapter 14 of Tanya that every single person has the ability to become a Beinoni. Now, if a Beinoni is someone who struggles, but is victorious in his battles, can really all become a Beinoni? You know what that means? It means you don't want to come to shul today, you push yourself anyways, you come. You don't want to put on tefillin today, put on anyways. Can we really be this guy or this girl who constantly pushes himself? So the Alter Rebbe once said that there are 500 types of Beinonim. What did he mean? So let me answer you with a story. There was a chassid by the name of Reb Nissim Nemanov. He was the principal of a yeshiva in France, a very holy man. And his grandson came to him and complained. He said, Zaidi, you're a Beinoni, why can't I be a Beinoni? To which Reb Nissim answered, let's learn for 5 minutes. They learned. And afterwards, Reb Nissim asked him, did you learn for 5 minutes? He said, yeah. He's like, did you have any other thoughts? Were you thinking of anything else while we were learning? No. You were a Beinoni, my grandson, for 5 minutes. You see, a Beinoni is not necessarily a level that we get to and that's it. We're forever a Beinoni. A Beinoni is just a person who does the right thing. Every second, a person has the free choice to go a step higher or chas v'shalom, God forbid, a step lower. If you make that choice to go one step higher, you are a Beinoni. Congratulations. It's those small battles that count. You don't have to win the war just yet. Focus on those small details, on those small victories. It's going to be hard, but if you haven't realized yet, life is not easy. The Rebbe once asked one of his Chassidim to do something important on his behalf. After doing so, the Chassid told the Rebbe, let me tell you something, it was not an easy task at all. So the Rebbe responded with a smile, since when did you sign a contract agreement with God that your life would be easy? So let's face it, we need to work. But how do we make it meaningful? How do we make it a life of happiness? That we spoke about a few weeks ago, about humility and happiness. To refresh your memory, when you do something and you know God is smiling because of it, it makes you happy. It gives you a sense of purpose. My life is full of meaning now because I'm living for something higher than myself. I'll finish off with a famous story. The students of the Baal Shem Tov were once learning, and a wagon driver came over and he was having trouble because his wagon and his horse got stuck in the mud. He needed help getting them out. And so he asked the students to help him out. The students responded, we can't. To which the wagon driver said, and hopefully I say it correctly, Mojish da, nie chodzish, which means in English, can you? Yes, but you just don't want to. We all know what we need to do, and we all know that we can do it. So what's stopping us? Most of the time, it's ourselves stopping us from going to greater heights, from growing, from becoming better people. So So let's take control over ourselves. Let's be true to ourselves. It says in the book of Iyov that man was born to toil. So let's get to work. Here's just a few small things you can do. You can give up of your time to someone else. You can thank God in the morning by saying Moda'ani. You can put on tefillin. I mean, I can go on, but that's just the point. Any step, any positive step is a step towards God and towards becoming that Beinoni.